Aye, sir. Aye, sir. Aye, sir. That phrase will be your new vocabulary, your new breathing pattern. For the next 12 weeks, those two words are the only acceptable response to anything a drill instructor says to you. Not okay, not yes, not I understand, just the two words, two syllables, said loud enough to rattle the windows, or said again until it is. But you don't know that yet. Right now, you're still on the bus. Right now, you still have a name. If you've ever wondered what Marine Corps boot camp actually feels like from the inside, not the action movie version, but the real, unglamorous, terrifying, transformative version, stay with this, because you're about to find out. The arrival. The bus goes quiet before it even stops. You don't know when it happened, somewhere between the last highway exit and the gate, but every single person on that bus stops talking at the same time. Maybe someone saw the sign. Maybe the darkness got thicker. Maybe your body just knew. You see the gate first, then the sign, then the silhouette of a man in a flat-brimmed hat standing outside the door before the bus even fully stops. The door opens, and the quiet ends, and then a man fills the doorway. He's wearing a campaign cover, that flat-brimmed hat you've seen in pictures, and he's yelling. His voice is controlled, precise, and so loud it physically vibrates something in your chest. Get off my bus! Get off my bus right now! Move! 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 You move. Your bag catches on the seat. You yank it free. Someone ahead of you stumbles on the steps and you nearly go down with them. Your sneakers hit the asphalt and you're running. Not because you decided to run, but because everything around you is running, and stopping means death, or at least it feels that way. Your heart is already somewhere above your throat, and every single thought you had about being ready is gone. Welcome to Paris Island. They put you on yellow footprints, painted on the pavement. You've heard about the yellow footprints. You thought knowing about them would make it less disorienting. It doesn't. You stand at attention, or what you think is attention, and your hands are shaking, and you don't know if it's the October cold or pure adrenaline, and honestly, it doesn't matter. A drill instructor is in your face. Not figuratively, his campaign cover brim is 2 inches from your forehead. You can smell coffee on his breath. You can see a vein in his neck that looks like a river delta. Where are your eyes, recruit? You don't know where your eyes go. Straight ahead, you think. You learned that somewhere. You stare at a point in the darkness and you do not blink. This is your first night. You haven't slept. You won't be sleeping for another 40 hours. Week 1, the shock. Week 1, they take everything from you. Not metaphorically, but literally. Your phone, your clothes, your wallet, your watch. Every object that connects you to the person you were before this moment goes into a bag, and the bag goes somewhere you will not see for 3 months. Then they shave your head. You sit in a chair, and a man with clippers takes 12, maybe 14 seconds, and it's done. You look in the mirror on the way out, and you don't recognize yourself. Not because of the hair, but because of your eyes. They look smaller somehow. Uncertain, like an animal that just realized the cage door has been closed. The first week is designed to disorient you, to break you into pieces. They know this. They want this. Sleep deprivation is a tool. Controlled chaos is a tool. The constant, relentless noise is also a tool. You are being broken apart, not cruelly, but surgically, so that something better can be built in your place. You learn the basics, how to stand, how to walk, how to speak to a drill instructor. You call yourself this recruit instead of I. You don't say I for weeks. If you forget to say I, you do push-ups till whenever it pleases your drill instructor. The language is intentional. They're dismantling your ego one pronoun at a time. You learn the rules by breaking them. You forget to call your drill instructor sir, and you do push-ups until your arms stop working. You look at a senior drill instructor without permission, and the whole squad bay hits the deck. You learn fast. Everyone learns fast. Every failure has immediate, physical, communal consequences. That's the part nobody warns you about, the communal part. When one recruit fails, everyone pays for it. You come to hate certain people in your platoon. Then you come to understand them. Then, somewhere in the second week, you stop thinking of them as people and start thinking of them as an extension of yourself, not because you like them very well, but because you can't afford not to. Your feet blister. You pop the blisters and tape them and keep going, because stopping means explaining yourself, and explaining yourself means a very bad 2 minutes in the quarterdeck, a small area near the drill instructor's office where the floor is rubber and the exercises are endless.
Your hands crack, the skin on your palms splits at the knuckles. You wash them anyway, you make your rack anyway, you fold your clothes to precise measurements anyway. A wrinkle in your blanket is a character defect, a smudge on your footlocker is a moral failure. They're not actually either of those things, but you learn to treat them that way, and that's the point. You call home once, briefly, during a supervised phone call in week 2. You have a script, you read from it. You hear your mother's voice, and something in your chest seizes up, and then the call is over, and you stand in formation, and you breathe through your nose, and you do not let a single thing show on your face. You are learning the most marine thing before you even know it's marine. You feel everything, but show nothing, and keep moving.
The physical reality. Let's talk about what your body goes through every day. You wake up at 5 a.m., sometimes earlier, to the sound of a metal trash can being kicked down the center of the squad bay. You have approximately 4 minutes to be in formation, dressed, boots tied, face washed. 4 minutes sounds like nothing, but after 2 weeks, you can do it in 2. PT, physical training, happens every day, sometimes twice. You run in formation, in boots, on sand, on pavement, in humidity that feels like breathing through a wet cloth. The runs start manageable and get longer. 3 miles, 5 miles. You run in step, in silence, watching the back of the head in front of you, counting your own breathings, willing your legs to keep moving. The crucible isn't until the end. Before that is just the grinding, daily accumulation of physical demand. Pull-ups, crunches, the combat fitness test, the swim qualification, which is its own special terror if you grew up somewhere landlocked. You tread water in your utilities. You float on your back in your boots. The water smells like chlorine and panic. You get calluses where you've never had calluses. Your shoulders change shape. You stop noticing the muscle soreness after week 4 because it becomes your new baseline. Soreness is your new normal. You operate on top of it. The food is institutional. You eat fast, 2 to 3 minutes in the chow hall, sitting at the edge of your seat, eyes forward. You shovel in whatever's on the tray. After a few weeks, you stop tasting it. Your body needs fuel, not pleasure. You eat like you're filling a gas tank. Weight redistribution happens to almost everyone. Fat goes, muscle comes. Your body is being recalibrated. Some nights you lie in your rack and your legs ache so deeply the pain feels like sound, like a low-frequency hum in your bones. You stare at the ceiling in the dark and count the days left, and then you stop counting because it doesn't help.
The mental game. The physical stuff is the obvious stuff. The mental architecture being built underneath it, that's harder to see while it's happening. Drill instructors are not simply loud. They are psychologists working without a license. They know exactly how much pressure a person can take before they break, and they apply that pressure deliberately, constantly, and without sympathy, because sympathy won't keep you alive in Fallujah. They find your edge, then they push you past it. Then they find your new edge. There's a moment. It happens at different times for different people, but it happens where you have nothing left. You're on mile 4 of a 5-mile run, and both your knees are screaming, and the guy in front of you is slowing down, and the drill instructor is running backward next to the formation, somehow not breathing hard, watching your face, and you realize you are going to finish this run, not because you want to, not because you can, but because the alternative, quitting, stepping out, raising your hand, is no longer a thought your brain generates. You've edited that option out of your mind. That moment is the point. That's what they're building. The mental demands stack. You have to memorize things, general orders, 11 of them, the rank structure, the history of the Corps, weapons nomenclature. You get tested on these at random, in the dark, while exhausted, while someone is shouting in your ear. Recalling information under stress is a skill. They teach it by creating stress. Some recruits quit. They're called doors, drop on requests. They walk a different path back to the barracks. You watch them and you feel something complicated, a tiny flash of envy quickly smothered by something else. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness. They're not the same thing, but at this stage they feel identical. Some recruits get recycled, held back a phase for performance or injury, made to do portions of training again. This is its own kind of psychological weight. Watching your original platoon graduate without you is a devastation that the Marine Corps has calculated into the program. You don't talk about fear. You don't name it or examine it. You don't have therapy sessions in the evenings. You process by running, in repetition, and by watching the guy next to you still moving, which means you can still move. Emotional processing in the Marine Corps is horizontal, shared between bodies, not spoken between mouths.
The rifles. Week 3, you get your rifle. An M16A4 or an M4, depending on what they're issuing. You don't actually care which. What you care about is that this rifle now has a serial number that you know the way you know your own name.
You can field strip it in under a minute, in the dark, with your eyes closed, because you've done it so many times that your hands now know the shape of it better than your brain does. The rifle is not a weapon yet. Not to you. Not this week. It's a relationship. You carry it everywhere. You sleep near it. You present it for inspection, and your drill instructor runs a white glove along the inside of the barrel, and if there is a single carbon smear, you will come to know the quarterdeck very well. The rifle range comes later. When you finally go live, lying prone in the dirt, controlling your breathing, acquiring your sight picture, pressing the trigger between heartbeats, something shifts. This is what all of it has been leading toward. The runs were so these arms can hold this position for an hour. The PT was so this body can absorb the recoil and come back on targets. The sleep deprivation was so this brain can still function, still aim, still squeeze when everything else wants to shut down. You qualify. Maybe expert, maybe sharpshooter, maybe marksman. Whatever the badge, you earn it on your own, one round at a time. And when you hit your qual score, something quiet and solid settles in your chest and doesn't leave. The 54 Hours Crucible. Week 12. This is the end, and this is the hardest part. The Crucible is a 54-hour field exercise with minimal sleep and minimal food and maximum everything else. You carry a pack that weighs 60 pounds. You move through the dark on land navigation courses. You complete combat-simulated tasks as a team. You carry simulated casualties. You cross obstacles. You do all of this on 4 hours of sleep over 2.5 days. On the last night, your body is a collection of complaints. Your shoulders are raw under the pack straps. Your feet are things you're carrying rather than things you're using. The guy next to you smells like 3 days without a shower, and so do you, and neither of you cares. Then the sun starts coming up, and they march you up a hill. The recon marine leading your column doesn't say anything. Nobody says anything. You walk up the hill in the early gray light, and your legs are mechanical things, automatic, because your mind has gone somewhere quieter, somewhere beyond the pain. At the top of the hill, your senior drill instructor is waiting. He's not yelling. That's the first thing you notice. For 12 weeks, this man has existed in a register above ordinary human volume. Right now, he's standing still, and his voice, when he speaks, is the quietest you've ever heard it. He talks about what you have done, not what you will do, what you have already done. The weeks, the miles, the weight, the things you carried that weren't in your pack. Then they give you the eagle, globe, and anchor. It's a pin, small enough to fit in your palm. You've seen it 1,000 times in your life, on bumper stickers, on flags, on the chest of every Marine you've ever seen. Right now, it weighs more than anything you've ever held. You are no longer a recruit. The man who put you on those yellow footprints, who has screamed in your face, who has pushed you past every limit you thought you had, extends his hand and shakes yours and calls you Marine.
What nobody tells you? Nobody tells you that after this, you'll miss it. Every day of your life, you will be grateful. Not right away. Right away, you're just grateful to finally sleep a normal sleep. Your body might have even forgotten how to sleep normal, but you are still grateful. You are grateful to eat without a clock, to hear your own name instead of this recruit. But weeks later, maybe months later, you'll be somewhere ordinary, a grocery store, a movie theater, a parking lot, and you'll feel it, a kind of flatness. The civilian world moves at a pace that seems soft to you now. Problems that once felt massive seem thin and manageable. You process discomfort differently. You walk differently. You sit differently. The Marine Corps didn't just train your body, it rewired your baseline for what hard means. And you carry that wire with you for the rest of your life, through everything that comes after, the MOS schools, the deployments, the homecomings, the years. The wire stays live, ready to conduct something, ready to hold. Nobody tells you that the hardest thing about boot camp isn't the running or the sleep deprivation or the drill instructors. The hardest thing is becoming someone new in a place that gives you no mirror to watch it happen. You don't see the change while it's occurring. You only see it when it's done. When you get home and your mother hugs you and something in her eyes shifts. Not sadness, not exactly, but recognition that something is different. That's when you understand. You went in as a person. You came out a Marine. Those are not the same thing. If this hit different than you expected, if some part of this felt like more than just words, it's because it is. This is what service looks like from the inside.
Not the commercials, not the recruiting posters, the real weight of it, worn in real bodies, by real people who chose to find out what they were made of. If you want to go deeper, the deployments, the MOS schools, the life that comes after boot camp, subscribe and stay close. This series is just getting started. And if you've been through it yourself, if you recognize any corner of this, drop it in the comments. Let the next generation know what's waiting for them. Semper Fidelis.